Hey everybody, Bill on from MMPC Tech, and I've got Mosquito here from the modu.com, and we're looking at the new Fractal Design Define R5.
The new series of Define case. This is all new, designed from, well, I guess the ground up, top down. I don't know which way they went, but it's all brand new. So if you have one, you might recognize a lot of the general features. I mean, you still have, some removable panels on top. You have a door on the front. It's got the insulation for the sound deadening on the door. One thing that's actually kind of cool, I've wanted this from the original Fractal Design Define case that I had. With a little bit of effort, I mean, it requires a screwdriver, but you can reverse the hinge so that you can hinge on this side of the door. So let's say you set it on your desk and you have your desk on this side and you don't want to have to reach around the door every time you want to access it. Well, just pop out some screws, change them over to the other side, and then you can just open it the other way. I like it.
Yeah, I see there is a lot of subtle differences between this and the original Define R4. The intake grill. It's a big difference there. The vents, well, it's how it's got the angled vents going on.
I like that it's the same concept, the same idea, but it looks new. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it looks different. I mean, obviously it wasn't angled and all that kind of stuff before. It looks new, and it looks a little bit higher end, I think. I don't know exactly if that explains out well, and it's similar to other Fractal Design cases. It's removable. It has a nice mesh filter on it, so when you need to, take that out and clean out your filters, it's easily removable. Behind that, you have room for 220 millimeter or 240 millimeter fans, and we like to talk about a lot on the Mod Zoo. They have slots for mounting your fans. That's nice. You can put them at whichever height works best for you for radiators or just fan spacings.
And if I'm not mistaken, the fan is a new design as well. These are brand new blade design. I don't know if the specs are different from the original fans. I'll post the specs up on the screen for everybody to see.
Underneath, another nice dust filter, and that slides out the front, and that is the whole length, well, minus a couple inches, but the whole length of the case, which means that you no longer have to find where the thing is on the back of the case and maybe pull it out from the wall to figure out how you're going to get to your dust filter. So that's nice that you can just slide the whole filter out from the front, and then it really kind of conveniently just goes right back into the, oops, I missed my grooves. It goes right back in for the entire bottom of the case, which is really nice, because then you don't have to worry about moving things around. You just take it out, because we all know, if it's easy, we might do it. If it's not, it can wait, and then it usually does.
I like the new design of the door. It seems much more sturdier than the previous.
It feels stronger. I know I have a Define Mini as one of the computers at home, and it always felt like that door was just waiting for me to do something wrong and break. But yeah, I would agree. It feels a lot beefier, I think, than a lot of the old ones. But still have two 5 1/4 inch bays with nice little covers for when you're not using them. Or, like I've done in the past too, you can also just recess your drive if you still need to have a drive. Just put it a little bit further back, leave the cover on, pop the cover off when you need it, keeps it clean. And it looks like we have a fan controller located on the inside as well. A little switch. So 3-position switch for that.
That's very stealth. I had no idea there was a fan controller in there.
Yeah, when we were looking at it earlier, I was like, oh, it has a fan controller, and I was like, oh, is there a speed control? And Bill told me no.
No, I didn't know it was there.
I noticed it when we were looking at it earlier, and up top you kind of have your standard array of ports. So you got your mic and headphone jacks, and 2 USB 2.0, 2 USB 3.0, reset switch, nice big power button.
Also noticed that the 3.0 isn't blue, it's black.
It is, but they're labeled.
Yeah.
Which I guess. You have.
It's been around long enough. We should know.
We figured that out, yeah. And the little cutout in the top of the door for the power light. I don't know. I haven't read. Is that the same where it's blue when it's just power, and then it kind of flashes purple once it's the hard drive activity light?
That's a great question. I
We'll
don't
have
know.
to figure that out in the review then. Okay, coming around to the side, it has 2 thumb screws. At least that's the way it shipped. There was 2 thumb screws up here in the side panel. You just remove those like anything else, like any other computer case. But then I can't get the side panel. Well, that's because they have now included these little latches on the case panel, and so you pull down on this quick release lever, and then now it can come off that way instead. That's kind of nice. So, I mean, if I'm just sitting at home with my computer, I don't really need to have thumb screws holding everything together. So if I'm, needing to get in, it's kind of nice to be able to just pop it off nice and quick. And yeah, it's kind of a nice little touch.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the inside of the side panel here, we have that same insulation for the sound dampening and that kind of stuff from the front panel that we saw earlier, and it has room for a single 120 or 140 millimeter fan, and then it also comes with, I think they call them ModuVents, with a little cover, so that way it keeps it flat. So if you don't feel like having a fan on the side, you can leave that in it, and it's also insulated to help with reducing some of the sound that you might get. And this thing is, it's a computer case side panel, and it weighs a good amount. It's nice, and it feels rugged, and it feels like it shouldn't have problems if I look at it wrong. Nice design. I like that there's no tabs. Like it's not just tabs holding the bottom on, that it actually sits in a groove on the case. I like that because I hate those tabs, because it seems like I always end up bending one, and then I have to bend it back, and that happens 5 or 6 times, and you break the tab off, and well, that's not fun. Alright, taking a look at the back here, you got your pretty standard 7 PCI slots. You have another area to mount either a 120 millimeter or 140 millimeter fan. It came in pre-installed with a 140 millimeter fan, another the same one. That's one of 2, the other one being on the front. More slots, so if you wanted to run an all-in-one cooler, you can have your radiator set up whichever way. I've run into issues where the ports are on the top and then it doesn't line up with the fan holes, so it's nice that they've included the nice slots for mounting fans instead of having to use everything for drilling holes and anything like that if it doesn't work out for you. And then you have more mesh to allow for venting on the side there over the graphics cards, and then standard cutout for your power supply, and it's got the holes and the notches for mounting it either with the fan up or the fan down. So if you want to draw air from the inside of the case out, or if you want to draw fresh air in from underneath, you can do either. And then it also has little rubber pads for the power supply to sit on. There's 4 of them in there, so that'll also help decouple some of the vibration noises. And then moving on to the interior of the case, these are new grommets. I don't think I've seen these on any of the Fractal Design cases, and these things are, you can still take them out if you want to, obviously, but they're a lot more sturdy than most of the grommets that I'm used to dealing with, which is really a welcome sight, because the number of times that I've had to fish wires through, and then it's always the last or the second to last wire you push through and you rip the whole grommet out, and then you can't get it back in with all your wires through it already, and you get mad, and then you walk away and you come back later. So that's nice that those are nice and strong, and you have all your holes and threaded holes for mounting your different sized motherboards, obviously ITX, micro ATX, and ATX. Nice big cutout for your CPU cooler backplates. That's nice. So then you don't have to take anything out if you change your mind and decide to change coolers, or maybe you start out air cooling and you want to go to water cooling, because there's room for that in here too. Define R5 comes with 8 of these trays, all in the stack on the front there, and you can mount either a 2.5 or a 3.5 inch hard drive. And one of the design changes here is you can see this kind of steps down, so it's really thin on the edge here. And what that allows you to do is when you put them back in there, those line up with the cutouts on the sides of the hard drive racks, and the airflow going through there is going to be significantly improved if you don't have hard drives and stuff in there, but you want to leave the trays in there. It's not going to impede the airflow anywhere near as much as a lot of the older designs did. And there's 2 sets of cages, a set of 5 and a set of 3. And both of them just have some thumb screws that we can remove here. And so you can remove either cage set. This bottom cage does have 4 screws underneath it that hold it in place. So if you want to remove or move that one, you will have to actually, flip the case over and get out a screwdriver. But so they've also included the ability, so you have your thumb screws over here. They also have a tab here, so you can rearrange your hard drives and put them in the other orientation. So if you wanted to have your hard drive sticking out the back and have the airflow front to back instead of side to side, you can have that option too. And then the other thing is that these, similar to their old ones, mount in fan location, like the fan spacing for 120 millimeter fans. And so you can mount a single 120 millimeter fan with a default hard drive cage configuration, or if you wanted to throw a radiator in the front or something like that, you can remove the cage in the bottom here and move it back 1 position to this fan section here. So then you can still have some hard drive storage space, but then also have the whole front open. Another thing that this case has going for it is there's 4 thumb screws, and then you can remove the 5 1/4 inch bay if you want. And what that allows you to do is set that off. If you remove the bottom one as well, you can actually install up to a 360 millimeter radiator if you wanted to have that much radiator in the front, and that would just kind of cover this area, and then you mount it with the two fan slots here in the front, which is a good thing that you can move the drives back if you wanted to keep them. But you can also install a 120 millimeter or 240 millimeter or 140 millimeter radiator, because they have other holes over back here too, in the floor. And then you can install 360 or a 280 or a 240 or obviously 140 or 120 in the front as well. And when you have the front drive cage removed, so if you don't put it here, I mean, you can pretty much go all the way up to your motherboard if you really wanted to. I mean, the motherboard tray back here, and I mean that's quite a bit of radiator. So I don't really think you should have too big of a problem with that spacing anyway. Okay, so if we move to the top of the case, you can see there's 3 little panels here, and they're just some tabs that hold them in place inside that you can pop out and remove. It's got more foam. This is a little bit less dense of a foam than on the side panels, but these are more sound deadening panels. And if we remove a couple of those, you can see that there's 2 sets of holes for if you wanted to, mount radiators or fans up here. You can have them be offset with 120 millimeter or 140 millimeter, so that you don't have to worry about running into your components on the motherboard. So you can have that further away. So that's kind of nice to be able to do all that kind of stuff. Alright, so if we take a look at some of our dummy stand-in fans, some of your possible configurations are 120 millimeter here. There's more mounting holes for them here. And then there's a 3rd set over here. And you may have caught, I did say mounting holes. They are holes, round and not oval, so those are not slot mounted. So if you don't have the proper 120 millimeter radiator sizing, what is it, 15.5 millimeter, 15 millimeter, and you're going to have issues there. But you also have slots actually for the 140s, but you can have a 140 here, again in the middle, and then on the end, And then these slots here are just for the ModuVents, these little top panel cover things. So those aren't actually for mounting anything. But there's also a set of 4 screws, or 3 holes technically. There's one here, here, and then there's one over here. And then you would use the corner that fit a 180 millimeter fan, or presumably radiator, but you'll probably run into clearance issues if you're trying to use a radiator for that. But so there's mounting holes for a single 180 millimeter radiator fan as well. Okay, so there's a little mounting plate that uses, I think it's 4 screws. It's either 4 or 6. There's some screws that hold this little top plate here in, that is what holds the 5 1/4 inch bay in place. So once you remove that, you can install up to a 420 millimeter, so 340 millimeter fans radiator in the top. And for the 140 millimeters, since they're wider, even if you do offset, you're still more likely to run into some clearance issues with the motherboard stuff. So Fractal Design kind of says you need to have slimmer radiators, probably the 30 to 35 millimeter fan or radiators, if you're going to use a 140 millimeter size. But for the other options, you can also do 360, 240, 120, which would all fit in the top here just as well. Those are offset more, so you could probably get away with whatever thickness you want, as long as it doesn't interfere with like drive cages or the fan or anything like that. It shouldn't be an issue because there's a pretty good amount of clearance between that and before you run into the motherboard. So here we just have a Hardware Labs GTS 360 from the Nemesis line, and just for reference, if you're mounting a 360, you'd be putting that, looks like you would have to remove the rear fan or move it down if you wanted to have your inlet outlet on this end, because otherwise these, at least on this radiator, don't line up on the end. But let's see if they do this way. Yep, they line up if you put the ports towards the front, then you don't have to worry about where your fan is located on the back. So that would be one thing to keep in mind. But if we take a look here on the front, we don't have the hard drive cage taken out, so I mean there's a bunch of space on either side when you have it mounted inside. So with the slots that they have here, you can probably put a 360 with the ports either on the top or the bottom. I don't know if it'll really affect it any, but we'll go into a lot more depth than this in the written review. So keep an eye out for that on the modzoo.com. Figure out which radiators are making this thing cry. We're torturous with our computer cases and radiators in the modzoo. It's ugly. Alright, so if we take a look at the cable management space, behind the motherboard tray you have about 15 to this little lip, which I believe is about where the panel will be, since it sits inside this groove. Then down at the bottom here you have about 30 millimeters, which is a little over an inch, which actually that's a pretty good amount of space for running your cables and stuff, especially if you just have to tuck a couple of them out of the way. But on this side of the motherboard tray we also have 2 new solid state drive trays, or 2.5 inch drive trays. Again, they have a lot of captured thumb screws, which is kind of nice. You don't lose them that way. But these are new trays. They're all metal. They're painted white, as you can see. Kind of adds a little bit of contrast, something you can see. But I like that it's 2 tabs that kind of go in and then swing into place. It's kind of nice. I don't know. The other design where you actually had the regular screw that you had to use instead of the thumb screw. I guess if you're installing a drive on it, you'll have your screwdriver out anyway, but whichever. Makes it more convenient. Something else that's new in the Fractal Design case world here is Velcro straps for cable management. That's nice. Don't have to worry about breaking my zip ties and having to go find another one. But there's also still a bunch of loops stamped into the back of the motherboard tray if you decide you need other locations for wire management, so that's nice as well. So you have your SATA power for your fan controller. There was a speed adjustment on the top in the front of the case, so it's powered from the SATA, and then it also has 3 fan connectors, but they're only for 3-pin. If you have PWM fans, well, you should get a PWM controller because that's what they're for, but otherwise you'll just have to not be able to use the fan controller if you wanted to, for whatever reason, power your PWM fans manually through the fan controller. But 3 connectors for that, kind of in a nice location, so if you need 3 for a radiator up top or in the front, or just if you have system fans you wanted to control, it's nice that they included that as well. So 180 millimeter for your CPU cooler, that's how much height you can have there. 310 millimeter graphics card length supported without removing the hard drive cages. 440 if you do, so that should be, I don't even know if there is a card that's 440 millimeters long. So that should be okay. Shouldn't run into any issues there. And they also kind of give you a couple of different possible options for hard drive cage, 5 1/4 inch bay, and radiator combinations, the different options. That is one thing that I was noticing that you can do, is if you remove this and the 5 1/4 inch bay, you can actually move all the hard drive cages up, so you can install a radiator on the floor and still have all of your hard drive cages, which I guess is kind of a nice option if you want a 240 or a 280 in the floor, but you still want 8 hard drives. Possible fan. So it looks like if you wanted to, you could have up to 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 fans. They're 120 millimeter or 140 millimeter in any of those locations. So 3 in the top, 2 in the front, 2 in the bottom, 1 in the back, 1 on the side. So coming around to the bottom here, we have, as you can see, the fan filter that comes out the front here. This is the front side over here, but they now have new feet, and they're the same size front and back. I don't know if that really matters to too many people, but they're kind of a shiny, they're plastic, but they're kind of look like metal, and then have a nice little rubber pad on the bottom here. So those are also going to help you with making sure you don't have any vibrations that come from your computer and start having fun with your desk and making all kinds of noise. So nice little update there. And looking on the bottom, it looks like if you were to remove these rubber pads, you can see the thread of a screw that kind of comes through on the bottom, so it looks like those are screwed in. So if you wanted to get a set of custom feet, you can easily, it looks like, just peel those off, unscrew the existing foot, throw the new ones in. Should be fun. Hey guys, we're back here at Bill's shop. Another day, another build. Got a whole custom water loop shoved in the Define R5 here, and it all went pretty well. I have an i7 and a gigabit OC board, pair of 7950s in parallel, all in the single loop, using a 360 and a 240, and I'm using this UT60 AlphaCool 240, so it's pretty thick, and that kind of helps show just how much room there is inside of this case. Even with the 360 and the 240 both, I mean, it's really not any problem to connect both of them to each other and get all that into a single loop. One issue that I did run into, though, is I originally wanted to put another 360 in the front here, but I kind of had issues with ports kind of running into each other, and I couldn't quite make that work. But if I needed to, I could have flipped it around and had ports over here, but then I would have ran into the fan, so I would have had to take that out. So I just opted for a thicker 240 along with a 360 instead of a pair of 360s. But I'm sure if you were really intent on having a pair of 360s in there, you'd be able to figure it out. So one other thing, I have an SSD installed on the back. They have the nice trays that we looked at earlier, but it's a little too high for me. I kind of wish that would have liked to see this SSD bracket maybe about that much lower, just because I didn't have any straight connectors for the power, so the 90-degree connector has to go that way, and it kind of runs right into the motherboard back plate, so that's kind of one annoyance for me. It's Would have been nice to have that not under stress the whole time. But as you can see with those, Velcro straps were nice and handy for running all these cables. I have the 24 pin and the graphics and all that stuff is all plugged in at the moment, and it's all hidden behind the little section of the motherboard tray that kind of angles in towards the rest of the case. And I found that to be really nice because it hides all of this so much easier. The number of times that I've had issues getting this giant wad of 24 pin cable crammed in between the side panel and the motherboard tray, but that angle made it quite a bit nicer, and the same thing with the bump out at the bottom. So yeah, overall this was quite a fun build, and it was actually pretty easy. I didn't run into too many problems when I was actually installing stuff, so be sure to come on over to the modzoo.com and check out the written review. I'll have an article posted at the same time as the video.